we'll start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udiraye Shanvatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanam Hridayantastu Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhotsatam Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Shivadaya Krishnavishta Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Prashad Nirvishesha Shunavadi Paschachade Shatarane Mukam Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. So we are resuming our discussion from Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 3, verse 19. And briefly, setting the context again, this was the set of verses that are being spoken by Shaunaka Rishi. And these verses are spoken to Sutta Goswami, obviously, to encourage him to continue speaking about the discussions that are happening between Maharaj Parikshit and Sukdev Goswami. So Sutta Goswami had kind of concluded one set of the question answers by giving a summary of the answer of the question that Maharaj Parikshit had asked, that what should I do? And he said, hear and chant. He said, what should I hear and chant about? And the answer was Krishna. So Shaunaka Rishi at this point is very inspired. And the previous set of verses that we had discussed in our last, on Monday, was a glorification of this process of hearing chanting. And then he kind of switched tracks and started talking about or condemning those who do not take pleasure in Krishna Katha, in Shravana Kirtan. So the previous verse that he spoke was, do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us do the beast not eat and discharge semen? So we had discussed that this verse was a rejoinder to an implicit objection that a person might make, somebody who is being encouraged to do Shravan Kirtan, and he would say, look, I have a life to live. And Shaunaka Rishi says, what's the point? Trees have a long life, but it's a useless life. And he might say that I have to sustain myself. And Shaunaka Rishi says that the bellows of the blacksmith, they also breathe. And they breathe much more strongly than you do. But what is the point of such breathing? And then the person might say, but I have to eat and I have to continue my dynasty. And he says, but the animals are doing the same thing. So what is the difference? So in in a way, um, Shaunaka Rishi is also glorifying the process of Krishna Katha. That one who partakes of Krishna Katha immediately justifies his human form of existence. Otherwise, he's no different from, in fact, not only is he no different, he's actually inferior. Because the trees, they live a much longer life. They live for thousands of years. The bellows, they breathe much more strongly. And the beasts are much more expert in eating and procreating. So one who gets a human form of life but does not use it for Krishna Katha is not even as good as the tree or the bellow or the or the beast. So this next verse is a continuation of that mood. 2-3-19. Svavedvrahosтрахараhe samstutah purusha pashu nayat karna patho petu jatunama gadagrajaha. Men who are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. So Shaunaka Rishi, he talks about 4 kinds of animals. He talks about dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he talks about a specific mentality that is associated with these animals, which is actually being talked about over here. So when he says men are like dogs, he's talking about a particular quality that is unique in the dogs that is being exemplified in this man. And Vishwanath Chakravarti, he actually translates it uh, uh, to a specific dosh. So, so Prabhupada says that the dogs, they have a slavish mentality, that they simply want to serve their master faithfully for bits of bread. And if the master orders the dog will go and bite somebody. If somebody is coming to help the master, the dog will go and bite the person. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that they exemplify the quality of krodh, or anger without a valid reason. Hogs, they have no discrimination. So they will eat everything. They have no discrimination of what to eat and what not to eat. And the dosh is mad. So mad is madness, eating without discrimination. Camels, they have this quality of eating thorns. And when they eat the thorns, then the inside of their mouth is cut and it starts bleeding. And they enjoy it, thinking that it is an exquisite taste of the thorn. And Vishwanath Chakravarti said this is the quality of lobha. So lobha is that one is cutting oneself, one is extending oneself to intolerable limits for some imagined benefits. Asses, they work hard for small rewards. They're handpicked. And the translation, then the quality is calm. So this is particularly the quality of the asses, that when they are looking to mate, they follow the female asses who keep kicking them in their face. And the asses, they find it very pleasurable and they keep following. The female. So these are the qualities of Kama, Krodh, madlob that are exemplified by people who are nayat karna. Nayat karna means that they do not want to hear. Karna is ear or hearing, they do not want to hear. Because they are reluctant to hear the pastimes of Krishna, they become materially absorbed and they begin to live their lives as dogs, hogs, asses, and camels. Not only do they do that, they also glorify others who have their conception. And they see somebody else who is eating without discrimination, and they will say, this is very good. I remember once I was flying, and next to me, there were two other passengers. They were strangers, and one was a woman and one was a man, and they were just talking, and I guess, eavesdropping. So the conversation turned to food, and they were sharing about the most exotic dishes that they had eaten, and it was pretty. What's the right word? It was pretty shocking to me. The woman was saying that how she had driven 100 miles in Texas to eat a particular kind of snake that is barbecued in butter. And the man was saying that how he had eaten a particular kind of frog that is full of poison. So it has to be prepared very, very, very few people. And the woman was saying, I've spent thousands of dollars. I have driven hundreds of miles to sample a particular dish. So they were both appreciating each other in terms of what's the most outlandish kind of dish that they have eaten: snakes and frogs and beetles and live ants. So it was quite educational. And there are actually restaurants that actually serve these kinds of food. But the reason that they do is that when you build a house, and if the pillars of the house are not strong, then you will need to have like uh, poles running from outside to support the house. So when people do activities that are not intrinsically satisfying, that are not intrinsically pleasing, they need that external we also see we are satisfied. Difference from a materialist perspective is that the association actually agitates them more. This guy said, I ate live ants, and the other girl said, I've never eaten live ants. Where can I go and eat live ants? So, so there was this competition of, who can get more out of their material senses. And that's a completely, it's a completely debilitating influence. So Prabhupada in the purport, he says that so Srimad Bhagavatam's categorization of the common man without any spiritual enlightenment into the society of dogs, horse, camels, and axes is not an exaggeration. The leaders of such ignorant masses of people may feel very proud of being adored by a number of dogs and hogs, but that is not very flattering. The Bhagavatam openly declares that although a person may be a great leader of such dogs and hogs, disguised as man, if he has no taste of being enlightened in the science of Krishna, such a leader is also an animal and nothing more. He may be designated as a powerful, strong animal or a big animal, but in the estimation of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is never given the place in the category of man on account of his atheistic temperament. Or in other words, such godless leaders of dogs and hog-like men are bigger animals with qualities of animals in greater proportion. So Prabhupada in the purport he actually extrapolates it. He says that this society of dogs and hogs and camels and asses will elect leaders who are also of the same category, but they will be bigger. So, so, so people who are materialistic will select leaders who are even more materialistic. People who are quarrelsome will select leaders who are even more quarrelsome. And ultimately, because of this, Srila Prabhupada says, they can be categorized into many things, but not as humans. In a lecture on this verse, Prabhupada speaks, just like if you're passing through thorns, you must be very careful. Otherwise, the thorns will be stuck in with your garment and you will be inconvenienced. It is said, the Vedas, Shurasya Dhara Nishita Duratyaya. Just like we shave with razor. Razor is very sharp. So if we can carefully handle the razor, we get our cheeks very cleansed. That business is done. But little inattention and immediately cut and there will be blood. We observe strictly the regulative principles and chant 16 rounds minimum, that will save us. But if we become inattentive to these principles, then there is a chance of being pricked by the thorns. So the thorns that Prabhupada is talking about here is the materialistic tendencies. That if we become inattentive to our chanting or to observing the regulative principles, then we will be picking up these thorns, which is Kam, Krodh, Madhulu. Next verse, 2-3-20. Bilebatoroukram vikramanye nashanvata karnapute narasya jiva sati darudrkev suta nachopagayat yurgaya gataha. The message about the prowess and the marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord is to be considered to possess ear holes like holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. So in the previous verses, Shaunaka Rishi has criticized a person who is not aspiring for a spiritual life. Now, in 5 verses, so Shaunaka Rishi will criticize the various abilities of such a person. So first, the mentality of the person was criticized. That he has a mentality of a dog or a hog or an ass or a camel. And his level of intelligence is actually inferior to that of a tree or a bellow. Now his various abilities are being criticized, and the reason being that Shaunaka Rishi wants to make the point that everything that we get is for one purpose only, to make spiritual advancement. Our ability to see and hear and speak and touch, our ability to act, they are there to help the conditioned soul make spiritual advancements. But if they are not being used for that purpose, then through different, in a more poetic way, through different analogies, he wants to show that how they are completely useless. So he talks about the holes on the snake, which are kind of like, they're not really holes, they're patterns. But they appear around the head, and they look like ears. So they look like ears, but they do not serve the function of the ears. The snake is not able to hear through them. Similarly, the tongue of the frog. the tongue of the frog is supposed to be there to nourish him. That through the tongue he tastes and he eats and he discriminates between what is good for him and what is not. But actually the tongue of the frog is the cause of his death, because the frog is constantly croaking, and when he croaks, then the snake comes. So one can see how the snake is hearing with its fake holes, the croaking of the frog with the misused tongue, and kills it. Similarly, these senses that are not properly utilized will fight with one another, and they will cause destruction. So this is the situation of one who indulges in Gramya and Prajalpa. So Prajalpa is the misuse of the tongue, and Gramya, they're both misuse of the tongue and the ear. So the people who are doing Gramya and Prajalpa, so they are speaking nonsense and they are hearing nonsense. So the same tongue and the ear that are meant for the emancipation is actually causing their death. So what the tongue speaks, the ear hears. So just like what the frog speaks, the snake hears. But ultimately what the frog is speaking is nonsense, and what the snake is hearing is actually fake. But it results in a clash of the snake and the frog. So similarly, those who indulge in Gramya and Prajalpa, their tongue and the senses of hearing, they're clashing with one another, with themselves and with that of the others, resulting in the destruction. So in the verse, we see this word so he says that Narasya Jiva Asati. So Narasya Jiva Asati, and Srila Prabhupada gives the word to word Asati as useless. And Vishwanath Chakravarti, he translates Asat to also mean unchaste women. So he explains this analogy that an unchaste woman will cheat on her swami, will cheat on her husband. So Asat Jiva, so an unchaste tongue will cheat on its owner, which is the soul, and go out to seek illicit pleasures in other venues. So what is the illicit pleasure? Illicit pleasure is Gramya Katha, Prajalpa, or the illicit pleasure is in trying to eat food that is not prasadam, or maybe worse, eat food that is condemned. So this verse is essentially talking about the consequences of improperly using the senses. Prabhupada says that the service to the Lord is the completely purified use of the senses as described in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord imparted instructions with full senses, and Arjuna received them with full senses, and thus there was a perfect exchange of sensible, logical understanding between the master and the disciple. Spiritual understanding is nothing like an electric charge from a master to the disciple. So this is an analogy that Prabhupada likes to make. And maybe there were some spiritual masters at that time who did that, fake spiritual masters. So Prabhupada gives the example of a guru who would actually have a wire in his hand that was connected to a battery. And then when a disciple would come, then he would touch the disciple with his hand and give him an electric shock. And then the disciple would go and say that uh, would sometimes would become unconscious, or sometimes would go and say that I experienced this wonderful uh, transfer of energy from my Guru Maharaj. And then Srila Prabhupada would condemn this and said that the exchange of between a guru and a disciple is through instructions. The guru speaks and the disciple listens. The guru instructs and the disciple follows. That is the bona fide way. Not, he says, as foolishly claimed by some propaganda mongers. And then he says, in spirituality, everything is full of sense and logic. And the exchange of views between the master and the disciple is possible only when the reception is submissive and real. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one should receive the teachings of Lord Chaitanya with intellect and full senses, so that one can logically understand the great mission. If somebody can find a reference of this, I'd appreciate that. I tried to see which verse Srila Prabhupada was quoting. I could not. So I'm guessing he's paraphrasing it. In a lecture on this verse, Prabhupada mentions these Mayavadis, they have got their ears, but they cannot hear about the activities of the Lord. They'll reject, oh, this is all Maya. Let us meditate. So these ear holes is compared with the snake holes. And another point he makes is another lecture he gives on this verse. He says that, so just like chaste women means that she's meant for her husband. Similarly, chaste tongue means which is meant for chanting Hare Krishna. That is chaste tongue and tasting Krishna Prasad. And so everything else is a sign of asat. Okay, so we'll do the next verse and then stop to see if there's any discussion. Bhara param patakrita justam apyutama apyutamangam nanumen mukandam. I have the wrong meter. Give me a minute. Bhara param patakrita justam apyutamangam nanumen mukandam. Shavau karau no kurute samprayam Hare lasat kanchan kanakanuva. The upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead, Hari. So in the earlier times, men would wear like a big silk turban, and even now, like sometimes if you go to Jaipur, then the turbans are actually some of the turbans, they can run like 5 meters long, 15 feet. And so once we had gone on a tourist excursion to Jaipur, and they were demonstrating turban tying, and it was literally, I think that turban was even more than 15 feet. And how they wrap it, and then they make a crest on that. So Srila Prabhupada says that this turban, especially the mention of pata kirita. So pata is silk turban. So a person who's wearing a silk turban, it's an indication of his pride. I'm an important person. And then one may hold up one's head with pride. But the weight of this pride will cause the person to drown in this ocean of death. And the more the weight is, the more rapidly the person will will drown. If somebody has a huge turban and they jump into the water, then actually the turban will cause them to go down compared to a person who doesn't have a turban. Similarly, hands decorated with glittering bangles. This actually does not mean women, because men also would wear decorations around their wrist. So the point is that uh, the hands uh, the hands that have such material decorations, if they are not engaged in the service of Lord Hari, should be considered to be like that of a dead person. So the hands of a dead person are useless. Why? Because they are not connected to a energizing source. So they may look like a hand, they may have all the features of a hand, but they cannot serve the purpose of the hand because they are not energized. So similarly, if one is not using one's facilities in the service of Krishna, they may look like it. It may look like the person is busy, the person is doing a lot of work, but actually speaking, the hands are dead. They're not doing any real work. So Srila Prabhupada gives some practical uses of the hands in the service of Krishna. So it's an illustrative purport. It's a preaching purport that's actually meant for us. The common man, if he has no time to worship the Lord, may at least engage his hands for a few seconds in washing or sweeping the Lord's temple. Maharaj Prataparudra, the greatly powerful king of Orissa, was always very busy with heavy state responsibilities. Yet he made it a point to sweep the temple of Lord Jagannath at Puri once a year during the festival of the Lord. The idea is that however important a man one may be, he must accept the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. This God consciousness will help a man even in his material prosperity. So it's interesting that Srila Prabhupada is reflecting the mood of Shaunaka Rishi. So he's considering material prosperity to be an illness or to be a debilitating condition. It's like saying that even though the person is sick, if he takes some medicine, he may be able to walk around. So Prabhupada is reflecting that mood, that this God consciousness will help a man even in his material prosperity. Maharaj Prataparudha's subordination before Lord Jagannath made him a powerful king, so that even the great Pathan at this time could not enter into Orissa on account of the powerful Maharaj Prataparudra. And at last, Maharaj Prataparudra was graced by Lord Sri Chaitanya on the very grounds of his acceptance of subordination to the Lord of the universe. So even though a rich man's wife has glittering bangles made of gold on her hand, she must engage herself in rendering service to the Lord. So Prabhupada makes an additional subtle point here, that if one is engaging their facilities in the service of Krishna, it does not deprive them of material opulence. So Maharaj Prataparudra, he was completely devoted to Lord Jagannath and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but he was such a powerful king that at one time he was attacked on two fronts at the same time by Maharaj Krishna Nagar from the south. He was the king of what is now Telangana, and by Nawab Hussain Shah from the east and from the west, and he defeated both of them at the same time, because he was such a powerful king. And Srila Prabhupada makes this point, that just because he was engaged in the service of the Lord did not make him any less. In fact, it made him more. So similarly, one should not think that one has to become a parasite on the society just because they have to take to God consciousness. Quite the opposite. that they will actually become the supporters. They will become the anchor for or others, both materially and spiritually. So in a lecture, Prabhupada says, anyone who has got some power, he must know that this power is given by Krishna unto me, and to execute his will, not my sense gratification. Otherwise, it will be burden and he will be finished. So this is in context with the example of Maharaj Prataparudra, that he had a lot of power. He was a great king, administrator, a powerful warrior, but he understood that none of it was really his own, but it was a benediction for the Lord, and he used that to serve Mahaprabhu. When Ramananda Roy, he wanted to retire after meeting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, so he wrote to Maharaj Prataparudra. So Maharaj Prataparudra was the overall king, and Ramananda Roy was the governor of the state. And he said, "This is why I want to retire. So please let me go." And Maharaj Prataparudra said that you can go, you're fine, but everything that you were getting from the king as your pay will continue, and I will take full care of your family. So he was so happy that somebody in his kingdom was going to serve Mahaprabhu, that so whatever little material opulence he had, he completely used that to serve this devotee. And it is said that because of this quality, Mahaprabhu's heart had already softened, even though externally he kept saying, no, 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 he's a king. And one time he got angry, saying that if you call him, I will leave, and you want me to get destroyed by talking to a king. So he was just increasing the anticipation of Maharaj Pratapurudha. And of course, finally, Maharaj Pratapurudha, after the Rath Yatra, he got an opportunity to massage his feet and sing some verses, and he was actually embraced by Mahaprabhu. Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, then let's continue. 2-3-22.
Hare Krishna, just one comment. Talking about the dog and the hog and the ass and all that, you know, while we grew up, we watched a lot of cartoon, and most of this cartoon, the figurine was dog, pig, cat. And I mean, we in this society, we already grew up with all this even before we get acquainted to them when we were kids. At your age, but when we were growing, we were watching a lot of cartoons, but all these,
right.
They were cat and dog and all that.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, 2-3-22. Varaitate nayane narana lingani vishno nanirikshato ye padao ninamtao durmajanma bhajo kshetrani nanuvrajato hare rayo. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representation of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his form, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock. And the legs which do not move to the holy places where the Lord is remembered are considered to be like tree trunks. So just like the holes that are painted on the side of the snake look like ears, but do not function like a ear. So similarly, the plumes on the feather of the peacocks, they look like eyes, but they cannot see. Similarly, the trunks are considered to be the feet of the trees, and uh, even though they are the feet of the trees, they do not serve the function of the feet or the legs, in the sense that they cannot move. So uh, the point that is being made repeatedly is that the facilities that have been given to us, if they are not being used in the service of Krishna, they should be considered to be useless. And conversely, if one is able to use even a little bit of that facility in Krishna's service, it becomes glorious. So Srila Prabhupada, again, he has a purport directly preaching to us, and especially as grahasthas. So he indicates that in the purport that one can easily engage all the senses in deity worship at home. So he's talking about grahasthas. And so in the purport, he's very strongly encouraging everyone to establish home deities and worship them as per their ability. So Prabhupada says in the purport, especially for the householder devotees, the path of deity worship is strongly recommended. As far as possible, every householder, by the direction of the spiritual master, must install the deity of Vishnu. Forms like Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan, or Sita Ram, specially, or any other form of the Lord, like Narsimha, Vara, Gauranitai, Matsya Kurma, Shaligram Shila, and many other forms of Vishnu. So he's making important points here. That one, that Archa Vigraha, Seva, deity worship for grahasthas is very strongly recommended. Secondly, it should be done under the direction of the spiritual master. So the spiritual master would advise that what are the seva that must be done according to the specific situation of a grahastha. If the grahastha has children, then the guru might ask to do simplified puja, and older grahasthas may take in more rigorous puja. And then the deities also, so they're all Vishnu tattvas, if you notice. Radha Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan. Then he says, in front of Sita Ram, he says, specially. And even though within ISKCON, you don't see a lot of Sita Ram worship, but conventionally in India, in Hindu families, Sita Ram is worshipped a lot. So they have what is called as Ram Parivar. So Ram Parivar consists of Sita Ram, Lakshman, and Hanuman. And in some cases, it extends to Bharat and Shatrughan also, because Lord Ram was a grahastha, and the whole Ramayana is about family values and families coming together, serving each other. So a lot of grahasthas in India, they worship Sita Ram in their house. But then he says any other form. He mentions Shaligram Shila, and at other point he actually recommends Shaligram Shila almost as mandatory for grahasthas. He says all grahasthas should try and worship a Shaligram Shila. Not in this purport, but in another purport. He talks about the worship of Shaligram Shila, because the Shaligram Shila is a self-manifested deity. So you don't have to establish a deity. The deity never leaves Shaligram Shila. So even though the grahasthas might do inadvertently some offenses, the deities in the Archivigra form, if the deities are not worshipped properly, then the deities leave. So it just becomes wood or stone or marble. But in Shaligram Shila, in Govardhan Shila, they are eternally manifested. So we don't really have a pran pratishtha for Shaligram Shila or Giriraj. There's still a welcoming ceremony, but in the other Archivigra forms, there's a pran pratishtha where the priest invites the deities to come and reside in the dhatu, thereby making it a deity. So Prabhupada then says that one's family should worship strictly, following the directions and regulations of Archana Vidhi, and as recommended by Vaishnav Tantra or Purans. So he also makes this point that one should not worship whimsically. Some people they figure out their own way of worshipping, and they worship saying that it's between me and Krishna, or I treat him like a member of the family, or something like that. And it's one of those things that, unless the deity treats you like a member of the family, you can't treat the deity. So you should have that. You should have that level of advancement by which the deity is agreeing to treat you like a member of the family. Otherwise, you can't call somebody at home who's considering himself as a guest, and then you become overly familiar with the person, and then so you're a member of the family, so go and clean my house, or give me some money. That will be rasabhas. So Prabhupada goes on to say, any member of the family who is above 12 years of age should be initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, and all members of the household should be engaged in the daily service of the Lord, beginning from morning 4 a.m. till night 10 p.m. by performing Mangalartik, Nirjanarchan, Puja, Kirtan, Shangar, Bhog Vaikali, Sandhya Arti, Path, Bhog at night, Shayan Arti, etc. Now this is temple standard, of course, but Srila Prabhupada is also saying that one who is living at home should aspire to be at that level. Engagement in such worship of the deity under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. Twice Prabhupada is making the same point, that one should only worship the deity under the direction of the spiritual master. And right now it's not followed that much, but maybe about 20 years ago or so, it was more or less accepted that one would not get a deity unless one had Brahman Diksha. And Brahman Diksha means that there's a spiritual master who's giving permission. Now the sannyasis and the gurus are a little bit more liberal. Even if the person is not a disciple, especially Gaur-Nitai deities, they will give permissions for Gaur-Nitai deities. Even Srila Prabhupada did that, especially Gaur-Nitai deities. He would say that at one point he said that even if the person is eating meat, let them have Gaur-Nitai deities at their house. Engagement in such worship of the deity under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master will greatly help the householders to purify their very existence and made rapid progress in spiritual knowledge. Simple theoretical book knowledge is not sufficient for a neophyte devotee. Book knowledge is theoretical, whereas Archana process is practical. Spiritual knowledge must be developed by a combination of theoretical and practical knowledge. That is the guaranteed way for attaining spiritual progress. So this is a point that Srila Prabhupada and Krishna emphasizes, that with knowledge there should be practice. That is how Gyan becomes Vigyan. That when you act upon the knowledge, then you have realizations. And when you have realizations, then you seek a higher level of knowledge. And then you act, and then the cycle continues. So even though Srila Prabhupada does not speak elaborately about it, but deity worship is a very safe first step for devotees looking to make spiritual advancement. because uh, it is regulated, it is within your house. You can start with very, very simple standards, but it is still effective. The higher forms of making devotional advancements, like by going out and preaching, or doing a Vaishnav seva, or um, worshipping in the temple, or Guru seva, they're more. Um, there is more. Uh, there is a greater chance of committing offenses, and it's also more difficult to do. One has to have develop more sense of humility in order to. For those of you who worship in temples, I'm sure you'll understand what I'm saying. That temple worship requires you to have a lot of humility. Similarly, service of Guru, because um, as you're serving Guru, the more happy the Guru is, the more he chastises you. So you have to develop that sense of appreciating the chastisement of the Guru. But deity worship in itself can be very satisfying. You can decorate the deities very nicely. People spend a lot of time and effort. Well, we do also, not a lot, but we do. We wherever we go, we try and shop for the deities, and we get them clothes. We dress them, we take the pictures, my wife puts them on Facebook. So so the whole cycle of deity worship is thereby completed. Okay, we'll do the next verse, verse 23. Jivan chavo bhagavatangrirenum न जातुमर्त्यो अभिलभेतयस्तु श्रीविष्णुपद्या मनुजस्तुलस्यः श्मशान च वो यस्तु न वेदगन्धम्. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of a tulsi leaf from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. So we see a slight change in the mood of Shaunaka Rishi here. Uh, Initially, he was talking about the angas of bhakti that are directly related to the service of Krishna. Shravana, Kirtan, hearing, speaking, using the hands, using the feet, directly related to Krishna service. Now he's glorifying the service to the devotees of the Lord, right? So he's saying that one who has not received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body, right? So receiving the dust of the lotus feet of a pure devotee is there is a physical aspect also, that one can actually physically take the dust and put it on. And then there is a symbolic aspect also, that when you take the dust of the lotus feet of a devotee and put it on the head, it means that you're surrendered to the devotee completely. You follow the instructions, you hold the person head over heels, or rather in this case, heels over head, above you. You're willing to support, do whatever is needed to support the endeavor of the devotee. So essentially exemplifying the strong mood of respect and service. And then he gives an real life example of Tulsi Devi. So Tulsi Devi is an exalted devotee of Krishna. So one can almost read this verse as, for example, a person who has never experienced the aroma of a tulsi. So the aroma of a tulsi can be understood as, so when does one smell tulsi? One is not supposed to smell tulsi directly, but after using it in the service of Krishna. So you use it in the service of Krishna, and you get it as Mahaprasad, and then you put it on your head, you smell it, and or you can drink it with water. There is the example of so who are the great personalities who changed the life? by smelling the aroma of tulsi?
The four Kumaras.
Yes, thank you. So the four Kumaras, right? So they were impersonalists, and that was the mercy that they got. The mercy that they got was the aroma of Tulsi Devi, and the acharyas say that even though Krishna was appearing for the four Kumaras, he could not have made them a devotee. By his own presence, Krishna could not have made them a devotee, because Krishna does not give Krishna Prem. Krishna, he has auctioned off his love to his devotees. He has nothing left. He has given it off to his devotees. So he cannot give something that he does not have. But his devotees have it in abundance. So it was the mercy of the Tulsi Devi that actually made the four Kumaras devotees. So why do the devotees have such a special position? And being in Gaudiya Vaishnav um, parampara, this is like bread and butter. This is our sustenance, because this is what we grew up on, in understanding the importance of Vaishnav Seva. So one is, when the devotees are pleased, the Lord is pleased. So the easiest way to please the Lord is to please the devotee. Then the devotees can do something that even Krishna cannot, which is what we discussed. They can impart Krishna Prema. And third and most important is that they are physically present in the material world. And they're physically present in an easily accessible form. So we are earlier on said that how the 9 angas of bhakti are the same, but Shravan Kirtan are especially glorified because they're easily accessible. So similarly, there are many ways to develop a connection with Krishna. But the devotees are the most potent because they're most easily accessible. You talk to the devotee will talk back to you. You present your concerns to the devotee will help you there. The devotee is full of mercy, full of compassion, and is there ready to help you. So the most potent form of Krishna's compassion manifests in the devotee. Vishnu Chakravarti says that when Shaunak Rishi says that that a person who has never experienced the aroma of a tulsi is also a dead body, although breathing. So he says that technically speaking, breathing dead body is a ghost that simply create disturbances. And people who are envious of devotees of the Lord are in the same category, that they are simply ghosts, in the sense that they simply create disturbances. So he makes this point because the first sentence also is certainly considered to be a dead body. And then in the second sentence, Shaunak Rishi says is a dead body, although breathing. So he wants to make a distinction between the two. That the first is a dead body in the sense that it is a body, but it has no useful purpose. And the second is a dead body that is breathing, which he says is like a ghost. So in this context, there is a inquiry from Maharaj Rahugana from Jat Bharat. So this is in Bhagavatam 5th canto. In terms of so Maharaj Rahugana, he asks Jat Bharat. So initially there's this interaction where he considers Jat Bharat to be a fool and he chastises him, and then Jat Bharat starts speaking. He starts speaking high philosophical facts, and then Maharaj Rahugana understands the position of Jat Bharat, and then he asks questions and Jat Bharat answers it, and then Maharaj Rahugana asks him that how did you attain such a liberated stage of being a Paramhamsa? And Jat Bharat replies that, O King Rahugana, the perfectional stage of devotional service or the Paramhamsa stage of life cannot be attained unless one is blessed by the dust of the feet of the great devotees. It is never attained by tapasya, the Vedic worshipping process, acceptance of the renounced order of life, the discharge of the duties of household life, the chanting of the Vedic hymns, or the performance of the penances in the hot sun, within cold water, or before the blazing fire. So development, both at the beginning and at a very, very exalted stage, they are all dependent on the association and mercy of a devotee. So Prabhupada says, the conclusion is therefore that one should be more serious about seeking the mercy of the devotee than that of the Lord directly. And by one's doing so, by the goodwill of the devotee, the natural attraction for the service of the Lord will be revived. So later on we will see Maharaj Parikshit, who has been hearing to everything. Well, he's not hearing everything which Shaunak Rishi is saying, because Shaunak Rishi comes later on, but he's hearing the tattva that is being presented by Sukadeva Goswami, and he will speak, summarize it in the positive way. So here Shaunak Rishi is condemning that body or that sense that is not used in the service of Krishna, and Maharaj Parikshit will glorify the proper use. So this is in Canto 10, chapter 80, third and fourth verse. So he says, actual speech is that which is used to describe the qualities of the Lord. Real hands are those that work for him. A true mind is that which always remembers him, dwelling within everything moving and non-moving. And actual ears are those that listen to sanctifying topics about him. An actual head is that which bows down to the Lord in his manifestation among moving and non-moving creatures. Real eyes are those that see only the Lord. And actual limbs are those which regularly honor the water that has bathed the Lord's feet or those of his devotees. So it's almost a flip around there, right? So earlier on, Shaunak Rishi said that a frog uses the tongue to invite its own death. But actual speech is that which describes the qualities of the Lord, and so on. So in a lecture on this verse, Prabhupada says, if anybody studies Bhagavad Gita from scholarly point of view, A, B, C, D, he'll not understand. Krishna therefore says that, Arjun, I shall speak the lessons of Bhagavad unto you because you are my very dear friend and you are my devotee. So the clue to understanding the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam, or even understanding the lectures. Sometimes we'll sit in a lecture and one person will be relishing it, and the other person will be looking at their cell phone and browsing something. Same lecture, same person, same environment, but two very different reactions. And the reason is that one of the person has been blessed by the association of a devotee. And this is how the blessings manifest. So the devotee blessings manifest in terms of one developing a taste for Krishna consciousness, whether it's in terms of hearing or doing actual service. Okay. Any questions, comments? We'll stop here and see if you have any thoughts.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. One question, Prabhuji. Generally, when it comes to prayers, when we think of devotees, it is more we think about Krishna Prema and the instructions. But prayers like to Krishna, whenever we get some problem, we generally pray to Krishna, oh Krishna, please protect me. So such kind of prayers we can do for two spiritual master also, like Guru Maharaj, like, you please protect me, you please give me the intelligence to act devotionally, like that kind of prayers are encouraged, Prabhuji.
It's a good question, Prabhu. I'm trying to think uh, if there are any standard prayers. So there are many standard prayers to the Guru, wherein we are praying for the Guru to help us make spiritual advancement. Right? So the Sansara Dava prayers, then the Guru Ashtakam that we do. So these are all prayers in which we're glorifying the position of the Guru. And understanding is when you glorify a particular quality, you're seeking shelter of that quality. The Guru being, being an expert in worshipping the deities, so you want to have the quality. So your question is a little bit beyond that. That you're saying that there are certain prayers that we pray to the Lord for protection, like we have the Narsing Kavach, or we have the Narayan Kavach. Now these are bona fide prayers, like Narayan Kavach is in the Bhagavatam, Narsing Kavach is in the Brahma Vaivat Puran. Generally, the mood of the devotee is to pray for service. That's the general mood. That's the general recommendation, that we pray for service. It does not make these prayers like they are non-bona fide prayers. Like, right, the whole Gajendra Moksha, if you look at the Gajendra Moksha, it's all for protection. And like I said, the kavachas, they're all for protection. Srila Prabhupada would say that if you're asking for protection, go to Krishna only. Don't go for anyone else. I am not aware of any standard prayers to the Guru for material protection. I'm not aware of any prayers where you pray to the Guru. Like, in Narayan Kavach, you say that, protect me from bad health, protect me from thieves, protect me in foreign lands. So there's all those kinds of protection that you ask for. I'm personally not aware of any prayers. And if anybody of the Vaishnavas, who obviously, have more experience in this area of prayers, if you're aware of any prayers that are now spontaneous prayers, you can of course pray anything, right? You can ask Guru Maharaj, please protect me, and that's more. It's just a prayer that you spontaneously make, and that's perfectly fine, because the Guru is a representative of Krishna. So just like you're praying to Krishna, you're praying to Guru Maharaj also. But like I said, I'm not aware of any standard prayers that are addressed to Guru Maharaj that are more in the mood of protection from material trials, tribulation. Is there anybody who is aware of any such prayers? Like I said, I'm not. So I guess I partially answered your question. At least you can pray to the Guru. Obviously, it is recommended to pray for Guru, but not sure if any prayer that I can recommend, based on the scriptures.
Sure, but spontaneous prayers we can pray even for material protection, like, right?
Yeah. I mean, if we can pray to Krishna,
yes,
we can pray to Krishna's representative. Also, the mood is the same. That we don't pray exclusively for material protection. We pray for material protection in a spiritual context.
Yes.
May I have good health so that I can serve devotees better, or may I have, may my wealth be preserved so I can use it in the service of that.
Thank you.
I remember once I think it was Mukund Maharaj or somebody approached Mukund Maharaj and said, Maharaj, he was an aspiring disciple. And then he said something like, Maharaj, I'm not able to decide, And I've looked at these two houses, and no, it wasn't Mukund Maharaj, it was a disciple of Mukund Maharaj. But Mukund Maharaj, so he was sitting there, and this person was asking Mukund Maharaj, not able to decide. I'm looking at these two houses. Which house do you think I should buy? And Maharaj is very gentle. I think, I don't know if he answered that. And the other disciple then he goes to him and say that, he's not your real estate agent. He's a spiritual master there. So I think like in everything in spirituality, the context is most important. If a devotee is fully surrendered to the spiritual master, then yes, that question it represents the mood of surrender. The person says that, I will not buy a house unless my Guru Maharaj likes it, or my Guru Maharaj approves it, right? So it is in the whole context of surrender. But I think this particular person was more like, not able to make up my mind. So one has 3-bedroom, one has 4-bedroom. What should I buy? So he says, ask your real estate agent. Why are you asking Maharaj this question? Can I have that satisfies you to some extent? Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
Yeah.
Mataji.
Yeah, just going through all these, I'm just realizing that how fortunate it is, that sometimes I think we just take it so easy, like, smelling the tulsi leaves and taking part in deity service and all of that is just like, it's so important, so valuable, and it's just becomes like a routine sometimes, like I'm just thinking like that value always to understand and realize that and keep it up that all the time. It's so important.
Yeah. Srila Prabhupada deliberately, he gave us all this so that it's like you slip from one place, you fall to another, you slip from there, you fall from another, but there is Krishna everywhere. Maybe you don't go to the temple, you stay home. There's deity worship. Maybe deity worship is too austere for you. There's prasadam. Maybe prasadam, is whatever it is. There is chanting. Maybe chanting not there. There is book story. If all doesn't work, there's a knock on your door and there's a devotee standing outside. So he's created this very, very elaborate safety net for us. And you're right. Because we kind of grew up in it, we take it for granted, just like a children, right? When your children are small, they take everything for granted. They'll go and say, where's my toy? Where is my blankie? Where is my this and that? And the parents actually create this whole ecosystem for them to create a favorable environment. So I completely resonate with your thought that it gives the sense of gratitude to Srila Prabhupada that he has so painstakingly constructed this large safety net for us in terms of Vaishnav Sangh and temples and books and kirtan, lectures, that one has to try very, very hard to be able to go out of it. Prabhupada is mercifully, he's standing everywhere to grab us. Thank you for sharing that, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, so I have 2 more verses, and that will finish this chapter. And so we'll do the 2 verses, and maybe I think we'll have some time for if there's any further discussion. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll quickly go through a summary recap of the chapter, so that next week I'll start straight away from the 4th chapter. Generally, I do a recap next lecture, but given the fact that I'm thinking I have some time, so we'll see. This next verse is a very famous verse. It's quoted in other scriptures also. 2:324. Tadasmasaram hridayam batedam yadgreha maner harinam deha vikriyatha yada vikaro netra jalam gatra ruhe shuharshaha. Certainly, the heart is steel framed, which in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place. Tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end. So this is the verse that gives most of the devotees a pause, right? Because essentially what Shaunak Rishi is saying, that if one is chanting the holy name of the Lord, and despite the fact that they're chanting, there is no ecstasy, there is no tears in their eyes, the hairs are not standing on an hand. So it says, certainly the heart is steel framed. Ashma Sharam, that the heart is steel framed. And most of us are actually in the steel framed heart category. So we are, so by reading this verse, we may think that we are, but we are not. And so we'll go through a little bit of an explanation on the verse. So Shaunak Rishi is talking about obviously a more advanced stage of bhakti, and because Shaunak Rishi is now, so he's going from one milestone to another. So Srila Prabhupada at this stage, he gives a flow of the second canto, which we actually discussed as part of the introduction to this chapter, that how did Sukadev Goswami arrive to this point from the point where he was talking about the Virat Roop, where he was talking about a person wanting to, or the person who is unable to see Krishna except in matter, to where he was able to see Krishna as Paramatma, to where he appreciated Krishna in the form of Shravana Kirtan, thereby executing Sadhana Vedi Bhakti, to coming to this point where he is displaying the Ashta Sattvic Bhav simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord. So if you remember, in the second canto, the first chapter, it talked about the Virat Roop, and as a conclusion, it presented Shravan Kirtan, hearing and chanting, right? So it's a best thing to do is hearing and chanting, but those who cannot do hearing and chanting, this is an alternative, that meditate on the Virat Roop. The second chapter then described the meditation of the yogi on the Paramatma feature. Then the third chapter, it talked about Panchupasana. So you remember that set of verses that talked about, if one wants a good wife, they should worship Uma Devi. If one wants a long life, they should worship the Prajapatis, etc. So they were like list of different devas, and that should be approached for one with specific desires. The Prabhupada said this is Panchupasana, which is a worship of the five things that are worshipped are fire, Vidyut, electricity, sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and the impersonal super soul, the partial, and finally the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. So having presented Panchupasana, Sukadev Goswami also, he puts a warning tag that whatever you get out of this, the results are temporary and trivial. So in one of his Bhagavad Saptah, what's the name of the sannyasi who does Bhagavad Saptahs? Radha Govind. Yeah, so thank you. So Radha Govind Maharaj, he quotes from a doha from Tulsidas. And Tulsidas says that One, that the mood of the demigods is that if you go and ask them a glass of water, they will ask you to first give them a, a jug full of amrit, nectar. So uh, the purport is that you have to give a lot to get very little. So that is the point that is made in the earlier part of the third chapter, that Panchupasana will, with a lot of effort, you will get something that is temporary and trivial. Now, in the later part of the third chapter, where now we are concluding that bhakti is glorified. So bhakti is glorified by its presence, and bhakti is also glorified by condemning those who do not take bhakti. So there is the positive and the negative of the negation. Those who take bhakti are great, those who do not take bhakti are rascals. So, so the external limbs, either individually and as a group, were criticized if they are not used in the Lord's service. Right? So we talked about the eyes and the ears and the tongue and the mind. So Shaunaka Rishi, he criticizes them. Now the same criticism is extended to the mentality of a person who is averse to spiritual advancement. So he's going from a gross to a more subtle platform. So the point that he's making is that even if a person is externally serving Krishna, but if his heart is not there, then that service is still not what it should be. So that is why he is directly talking about the heart. So he says the heart that does not transform with the chanting of the holy name is ashmasharam, is an iron heart. So when he's saying transformation, what is the transformation that he's talking about? So the internal transformations, they are subtle. So they are in the mood and mentality of the person, but he brings them forth by relating them to tangible external symptoms. Right? So sometimes we say that, a person is embarrassed. And embarrassing is a more internal, being embarrassed is an internal thing. But then a person who's embarrassed, the face gets flushed, maybe the speech he begins to stutter, maybe the eyes become wide. So those are the external symptoms that manifest the existence of an emotion. So Shaunaka Rishi is doing the same thing. So when he's talking about the transformation of the heart, he's linking it specifically to two symptoms. He's saying netra jalam, which is tears flowing from the eyes, and gataruheshu, which is the standing of the hair. So one may say that I have seen so many people cry, that when a person loses something important, they cry. And the hair standing on an hand, it's in English is called horripilation. So it's a little uncommon, but it also happens it can happen for non-spiritual reasons, generally out of fear. That when somebody experiences unexpected extreme fear, then the hair stand on an end. So in order to distinguish it, Shaunak, he clarifies it and says, harsha, that a person whose netra jalam and gatra riheshu is because of happiness, harsha. So the only time that this can happen out of harsha is if there is a spiritual component. The only time that this can happen out of happiness is when the heart has been transformed through the chanting of the holy name. So Prabhupada in the purport says, the bhava stage is manifest by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, failing in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally trance. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains the symptoms, and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in study and accelerating uh, manifestations. So, Jiva Goswami, in the Sandarbhas, he says that if one is continually chanting, but these transformations do not take place, they are symptoms of namaprad, right? Offenses to the whole. So this is where I said that this may point to us partially, but not completely. So when a person is chanting and is not able to see this transformation happening, the diagnosis is that the chanting is offensive, namaprad. The opposite is not true, and we discussed that if a person is shedding tears or experiencing horripilation, it does not necessarily mean that he's experiencing spiritual ecstasy. So Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu says that when a person has a hard heart but practices exhibiting sattvic bhavs without even a touch of emotion, the appearance of tears or such symptoms are known as nisattva. So these are the examples of the sahajias, that they display the external symptoms, but there is no change of the hearts. Now, the absence of these symptoms does not indicate a lack of advancement in devotees. So Prabhupada makes the point that if you're looking at advanced devotees, and we see that they're not crying when they are chanting, or their heads are not standing at an end, and then we should not make this conclusion that they have a steel framed heart. Why? So Srila Prabhupada explains this, that when Lord Chaitanya met Sri Ramananda Rai of Kavur on the banks of the Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms. But because of the presence of some non-devotees, Brahmins, who were attendants of the Rai, the Lord suppressed the symptoms. So sometimes they may not be visible in the body of first-class devotees for certain circumstantial reasons. And Prabhupada would often give the analogy of how a wife is carefully guarding her love for her husband in public because of a natural shyness. So similarly, devotees, advanced devotees, they guard this. Srila Prabhupada, once in a while, when the symptoms are very strong, he would get overwhelmed. But generally speaking, he was very careful to guard these symptoms. So a related question over here is that if advanced devotees cannot be recognized by these symptoms, how can they be recognized? And then Prabhupada explains that they can be recognized by steady bhav. They can be recognized by the fact that there is a cessation of material desires, kshanti. There is avyartha kalatvam, that such devotees will utilize every moment in the transcendental loving service. And there is namagan sadaruchi, that they always experience taste and eagerness in glorifying the Lord. There is pritistad vasati sthale, that there is attraction for living in the land of the Lord. And there is virakti, which is complete detachment. And finally, there is man shunyata, there is a lack of pride. So these are symptoms that are manifest, that one can understand. So sometimes Prabhupada says, sometimes all the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the Prakrit Sahajiyas. But the pseudo symptoms are at once detected when one sees the pseudo devotees addicted to so many forbidden things. So when one sees that the other symptoms are not there. So what are the other symptoms? Like cessation of material desires, utilizing everything in the service of the Lord, having eagerness to glorify the Lord. When those symptoms are not there, but the external symptoms are there, one can understand that such a person is uh, is uh, is faking. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he talks about another category of spiritualist whose heart melts but remains like iron. So the metaphor is explained in the third canto, 28th chapter, 34, and the verse says that by following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy and is constantly bathed in a stream of tears, occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which is used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity. So the word that is used over here is Dravat Hridaya, means that the heart has melted, which means that, which is a metaphor of saying that the material conception has been has been uh, has been uh, uh, has been dissolved. So a yogi who is practicing austerities, by the nature of the austerities, may become hard-hearted or stoic, unless he is using his mind to attract Krishna. So I'm actually running out of time. I'm trying to. So this verse has. So why don't we do this? I want to do justice to this verse. It's an important verse. I think I miscalculated my time. So what we'll do is that we'll start from this verse again next week, because Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur does a very nice analysis of uh, of the metaphors that are used in this verse, and then we will go over it, and we'll have one more verse left in the chapter, and then we'll start with the fourth chapter. So I hope that's okay by you, and my apologies for misjudging the time. Any quick questions or comments?
One comment on the question of prayer. I've been looking at this little book here. It's called Vandanam by Satru Das Goswami, and there's one chapter here that is called Who to Pray to. And just in 1 minute, he was saying that this was 1970, that he was uncertain who to pray to, whether he should pray to Prabhupada and Krishna at the same time. And then there was a letter from Prabhupada dated 27th of April 1970, where Prabhupada addressed this question. And just in a few seconds, I'm going to read it. Regarding your question, are the spiritual master and grand spiritual master consciously aware of the sincere devotee who prays in love to them? The answer is no conscious prayers go in vain. They are transmitted positively. But one thing you must know, that any prayer you offer to your spiritual master or superior spiritual master, all of them are conveyed to Krishna. So no sincere prayers go in vain. We shall always offer such prayers to spiritual master, superior spiritual master, Vaishnavacharya, Lord Chaitanya, and at the end, Radha Krishna. That is the system. Letter dated 27th of April 1970.
Very nice, very nice. So I hope that helps you, Ravi Prabhu, in terms. I know one part of your question also was that can I pay to my spiritual master for material protection? And even though it's not explicitly addressed here, I think it catches the mood. that whatever you pray to your Guru Maharaj, it gets reflected to Krishna. So just like you would pray to Krishna for protection, same prayers can also be directed to your Guru Maharaj. He acts as a parallel medium. Right. Thank you, Paramatma Prabhu. Okay, so we'll end over here. Next week we'll start. We'll do the last two verses of the Bhagavatam from verse 24 onwards. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavrind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hi, Gaur Premanand. Thank you very much.